Hi guys, my name's Sandy Ross and I'm a naturopath, nutritionist and acupuncturist, and I'm a lecturer at Endeavour College of Natural Medicine. And in this video we're going to be making a traditional congee soup. So traditionally it's called Zhou, which is spelt Z-H-O-U and my pronunciation, otherwise spelt J-O-O-K in the south for juk. And it's basically like a gruel congee. It's a soup made up of just rice and water, and then there's always ways on modifying it to enhance different properties that you're trying to work on within health. So congee is found all throughout East Asia. They have different forms kind of when you start going to the West Asia, like you'll have more the lentil based soups, which you might know of as dal, and throughout the eastern part, there's definitely a rich tradition of having congee as breakfast. So congee is actually just 1 part rice to about 6 or 7 parts water. So you're using a lot more water than you are traditionally when you're just cooking up rice. And that really thickens it and makes it easy to digest. It breaks it down completely. So traditionally it's found about 2,500 years ago, used medicinally for chronic illness. So if you've got someone who's really weak and fragile and potentially, teeth are falling out due to poor dental hygiene, or postnatal when you just, need to rest up, something like congee is super easy, and the ability to break it down almost requires no energy. So when we talk about the middle jiao in Chinese medicine, we often talk about the fire that we have, and so someone who has a weak digestive fire should handle breaking down congee quite easily. This is also a great food to offer to babies, and you can modify it by putting things in there, extra protein, good fats, some fibers with extra veggies in there, and they seem to like it. It's a very neutral flavor. The properties are slightly sweet and slightly warm, and that will modify also depending on what grain you're using. So you don't have to use rice. In this one we're making traditional congee, so we're going to be using rice, but you can certainly modify it with a more warming grain. Like you can even use, like for example, oats, which is kind of like traditional porridge, which is a very European version of the congee, if you ask me, or something I like to use, which is quinoa. So when you've soaked your quinoa, and then you can actually replace rice with quinoa if you're wanting like a higher protein, less kind of carby version of this in a congee. So from a Chinese medicine, we're talking about building and supporting the digestion and the middle jiao, and helps to tonify qi as a qi tonic. So you can add things to congee to actually enhance whatever part of the body you're trying to work on. So for example, if you've got someone that's blood deficient and you're trying to build blood, you could add red Chinese date and Dong Gui into the congee as you're cooking it, and that'll help to be more blood building. You could also make it on a chicken stock broth, or use some sort of like beef broth or whatnot, and that's going to obviously add the more blood building component to it. If you've got someone who's vegetarian, they could make up a vegetarian broth made on root vegetables, things like beetroot as well, and that's going to make it more blood building. Then you're going to add your condiments, and you can add fillers into it. So you could add things like protein inside it. Chicken or tofu vegetarian are popular ones that go in congee. Pork as well, eaten throughout China quite a lot. And then vegetables, you can add them in as they're cooking, because it can cook for a couple of hours, or it can be actually cooked a bit quicker than that if you have a pressure cooker. And then your condiments on top of it are also going to support whatever conditions you're working with. So let's just say you're wanting to add condiments that might be a bit more blood building, then you can add more sweeter flavors. The concept of the congee itself is slightly blood building anyway, so you can really focus on some other elements. So if you're wanting to support kidney qi, you might add some like Shitake mushroom, some Nori or seaweed or kelp flakes, and some good quality salt. If you're wanting to support lung, you could do things like spring onion, which is a traditional topping anyway, or some of those pungent flavors like garlic and ginger. If you're wanting to support the liver and move liver qi, then you go with your bitter leafy greens, and you can use things like lemon, lime and sour foods. And then for the earth element, if you've got, the fire element, if you've got, things you're trying to look at with the heart conditions, then you'd use your bitters and also your dark berry kind of colours, so you can make a sweet congee. And that's another option too, is making a sweet congee. So I've had lots of people make lots of congees throughout my classes that I've taught, and we've really had some delicious ones come through with pumpkin, with millet, just using some really kind of earthy flavours and foods, so root vegetables, and mixing up the grains, and then you can serve it with potentially something like honey or some pure maple syrup to have more of a sweet kind of congee. So it's something you can really play with, but as I said, this video we're just going to keep it traditional, but I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight as to where you can go with congee. I just wanted to add though, from a Western nutritional perspective, traditional congee is going to spike your blood glucose levels. So great if you're poor, don't have access to food, and need to just get whatever you can into your body because you potentially can't digest much, and it's going to give you that energy that you need. But if you're someone with like polycystic ovarian syndrome in a Western world, having white rice congee, that might not agree with you very much. So always considering whether you've got someone who's potentially got some problems with insulin as to whether congee is suited to them, and if so, then you're just going to make sure they add good quality protein and good quality fat so that it doesn't actually increase their blood glucose levels constantly. But the very Western version of congee for breakfast is porridge traditionally here. So look at background also, that really comes into it. But this is a lovely thing that you can have, a couple times a week to support your health depending on where you're trying to go. So let's get cooking. So here I've got the congee boiling up, so I'm just going to turn it right down now and grab a spoon out. As you can see here, I just want to give it a bit of a stir so it doesn't stick. And I'm going to let it simmer now for probably an hour. So this is where, if you wanted to add a few things to it, is a good chance to throw in some ginger, some garlic, or some pungent flavoured herbs. Or your goji berries or your red Chinese date to add those extra tonics and blood builders that you want to put in there. So I'm just going to pop the lid on now, and we'll come back to that soon. So this is the congee. It's been cooking for a bit over an hour now, and nice and thick, but still quite soupy like. And I'm going to dress it now with some condiments. Okay, so I have served up a couple of bowls of the congee, and I'm about to put some condiments with it. So a couple of the traditional condiments are things like spring onion. So the more white part of the spring onion we use, the better it is for the metal element, for the lungs. It's more pungent, and the greener part starts to enter into the liver and really support moving the liver chi. So got a little mixture of both. I'm going to use a little bit of good quality pink salt, Tamari, which is like a healthier soy sauce version, sesame oil, or you can use sesame seeds. A lot of the traditional recipes actually use rice wine vinegar, but I'm going to be using apple cider vinegar, and I love a little bit of chili oil, so I'm going to add that in addition. That'll be pungent, good for the metal element, adding a bit of spice, supporting liver, good for blood vessels. Sesame is really supportive for kidneys, as is soy sauce as well. So we'll kind of be entering most of the channels with this combination of flavour, and I'll show you once it's all done. So there we have the finished product, the congee. So once again, really good for supporting digestion, the middle jaw, as a chi tonic, and good for people that chronically are ill and have poor digestion and need a little bit of extra boosting. And it tastes amazing. Hope you enjoy.